About a month ago, I led a group of USC students to Tucson, Arizona, a deal, went on the trip last year. We do this every year. And it's all about an experience about border justice activism, interfaith border justice activism along the border. So it's all about learning about the humanitarian crisis that continues down there. About 250 people a year die of thirst or exposure on the border, and many more probably die as well that we never hear about, that are never found. So this is an experience learning about what faith-based activists are doing about this situation, both to deal with the humanitarian issue and also to change our broken system in this country. So a really intense week, as Adil can attest. Ask him about it. So along the trip, we met with two longtime border justice activists, Ada and her husband, Emrys Staten. And we were talking with Emrys, the students, and myself, and the two of them. And Emrys told his story about his involvement in a group called No More Deaths. Both of them met each other in the course of volunteering and working with this organization. This group puts a tent out close to the border, and they observe the human rights issues, humanitarian problems, and also intervene with Samaritan kind of work, putting water on the trails, helping out with first aid, helping migrants who want to give up, helping them get to Negros so they can be rescued from danger or exposure. So it's very intense work in a tent on the border in 120 degrees in the summer and freezing in the winter and very harsh conditions up in the mountains of southern Arizona. And he was very involved. He got arrested for littering. The government threw the book at him. They decided, well, you left water bottles on the trails in the Buenos Aires National Wildlife Area, and we're going to charge you with littering. And anyway, he had to go through a lot of intensity that he went through with that process. Anyway, after all this effort and storm and drang around all these issues and the physical hardships and the emotional toll that it took, he burnt out and really hit the wall emotionally and physically. And in the process of gathering his wits, he began to reflect on what was different about him versus some of the other people who were involved in this work. He realized the people who hung in there, were able to continue in this work, had some kind of a spiritual life. They had a spiritual discipline, they belonged to a church, some kind of group that supported them spiritually, and it gave them perspective and gave them a larger picture of their work, put a context around the work that they were doing. And he saw that these people sustained in the work. They were able to carry on and to moderate their behavior so that they could continue. It's a lot like being on the airplane, yes? The sign says, place the oxygen mask on yourself first before you put one on the child next to you. Put it on your face first so that you'll be able to serve others. So he saw that other people around him had spiritual oxygen, and he burned out and they didn't, and he realized he needed something. On a spiritual journey, which eventually led him to go to seminary and become a Unitarian Universalist pastor. It could happen to you, this journey. And obviously one doesn't need to go to seminary in order to find that, but that was the path that opened up for him. And that reminded me a lot of a story that I heard from my pals, Rock and Doug, way back in my college days. My pals, Rock and Doug, we were all in Santa Cruz, California at that point. That's where we went to high school together, UC Santa Cruz. And my friends Rock and Doug decided it's time for adventure. Time to leave Santa Cruz. Time to get out of our small town and see the big world. And so they decided, let's go to Seattle and have an adventure. We'll go get jobs up in the great Northwest. Who knows what we'll do, be lumberjacks or something. So they go down to Highway 17, bottom of Highway 17, that's the road over to San Jose, points north. Put out their thumbs and they put out a sign, Seattle, like this. And they're waiting and they're waiting and they're waiting and they're waiting. and nobody picks them up. And it's starting to get late in the afternoon. Time is going by, no ride. Finally, Rock, clever fellow that he is, still a clever fellow, he goes, ding, gets an idea, and he goes, I'll turn the sign around, and he writes Alaska. They stick out their thumbs. Right away, somebody picks them up and says, oh, that's cool. You're going to Alaska. All right. That's great. I'm only going as far as San Francisco. Would that help? Oh, yeah, that would help a lot. Off they went to Seattle using their Alaska sign from then on. So it's an example of aiming higher so that you can get further. Gandhi, Mohandas K. Gandhi, believed that his quest was for what he called self-realization, which is another name really for God. Yes, a Hindu approach. He believed that what he was aiming for was God. And it just happened that working towards the end of the British Raj over India was just an incidental step on the way toward the higher goal of self-realization. Now, self-realization, this is not about selfishness. This is the opposite of selfishness. We're talking about capital S self, the universal self, rather than small s self of selfishness. So he realized that his goal was self-realization, and because that was what sustained him and drove him and inspired him to work, that's what made him patient enough to put up with all the tough stuff that happened along the path towards ending the Raj. That was, ending the Raj was almost trivial compared to spiritual realization and oneness with the divine. So by aiming higher, Gandhi got further. He was able to, who knew how it was all going to turn out, this campaign, this momentous nonviolent struggle to end British rule over India. So he saw that as his real goal. He was hitchhiking to Alaska, and that's how he got to Seattle. Hitchhiking towards God, that's what got him, sustained him through the struggle to end the Raj. Spirituality and service. What I have learned and share stories about in this book is that for me, spirituality and service turn out to be the same thing. Spiritual practice and the work of service are one and the same. The skills that I have to have, or the practices that I have to use in order to pursue my spiritual life, are identical to the practices that I need to use to make a difference in the world and to serve other people. For one thing, it's about out-of-ego experiences. Yes? Serving others gets us out of our small s self and into the capital S self that is the other, that is universal, that's shared by us all. And I've had a lot of experiences that have drawn me out of my small s self, given me this out-of-ego experience in the course of service. I spent many years working with homeless people. I started and then was the director of an agency that serves the homeless in Palo Alto. It's still there. Now it's called the Opportunity Center. At the time it was called the Urban Ministry, interfaith organization. And I will just never forget the learnings that I had in the course of doing that work every day with people living on the streets, living in extreme poverty, and with many of them with mental illness, alcohol and drug problems, many other challenges. And just coming out of myself, just those moments when your jaw drops and you kind of stare slack-jawed at someone and you just give yourself over to them, because that's what they need more than anything else. I think I've had many urges, and during that time I had a lot of urges to fix people. People would show up, it's like, you got a problem, I know the answer, here's the solution, let's get you into rehab now, let's get you signed up for Social Security now, let's get you indoors now, let's get you housing. Oh, the list goes on. But, and that's all good. Sometimes that's what's needed, all right. But what I learned the hard way very often, and I share these encounters, some of them in the book, what I learned the hard way is that really what people need more than anything else is just someone to sit with them and just be there. Well, guess what? That's the same thing as mindfulness meditation practice. Sit there and be. Just be. Be present, listen, don't judge, let people be what they are, let them feel what they're feeling. Don't try to fix it right away. When they want help, specific help, they'll ask 90% of the time. It is staggering, I've learned, how little people need my help versus how very much they need my presence. Certainly that's true of child rearing. Hold on. My daughter's a great teacher around that too. She wanted my presence and my attention, not my intervention, 90% of the time in difficult situations. So it's the same. It's the same. Meditation, mindfulness meditation practice is the same thing. It's the same darn thing as sitting with someone who's in crisis and being present with them. It's the same thing. Getting oneself out of the way, small s, so that we can experience together the capital S self-realization. I mean, you think about it. You know, you go to a store and you encounter the salespeople there, and we all know the difference between the salesperson who comes up to you and says, "How can I help you?" And they mean it. And they want to know what you want. It's like, well, you know, what kind of pants work for you? And I talk, well, you know, what colors do you prefer? What type of fabric, and so on. And let's check these out. Here's some options. You know, what works for you? And you work together with the salesperson to find what it is that you, the customer, wants and needs. And you come out of the store, even if you didn't buy anything, you come out and you know, I felt like I got served. Someone served me. Just the sales. You walk in the door, and they take you straight over someplace. Oh, these look so good on you. You're like, perfect. They're perfect. Colors was perfect. You know, matches this, that. Arm waving and directing. I've got just the thing for you. They're so busy, so stuck in themselves that they can't get out of themselves to serve you. And we've all had that experience. And it's amazing what happens when you get out of yourself and go over to the other. Empty yourself. And the scripture, Christian scriptures talk about this. That Christ emptied himself, took the form of a servant.